Welcome back. This presentation is Getting Started, IEP Goal Progress Monitoring. We are presenting the first part. This is the first part of a multi-part series. This presentation is by the SPED coaches. I am Becky Branch. I know that you've just come back from summer and we've got a lot of questions, but we're hoping that this presentation will help you kind of ease into the school year with some basic information about progress monitoring. Our learning objectives: review start of the year progress monitoring, identify steps to collect baselines and the basics of progress monitoring, explore samples of progress monitoring. So the examples we're going to be using are not exemplars by any means. They're just random samples that we picked to kind of get an idea of what's out there and how you'll be able to progress monitor some common goals. As we get started, we completely understand that this is a challenging process. And by what I mean is, we all know we're supposed to progress monitor. We all know that it helps drive our instruction, know where we're supposed to go with students. But the other part is, especially with secondary, it can be very challenging to figure out how to monitor those goals, how to get other teachers to buy in to do so, and even when to progress monitor those goals. So everybody just take a breath. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through it, and we'll have lots of information to come that might help you support you in writing those goals and additional progress monitoring sources. As we go through these goals, you'll see that some of them probably are missing information, or the way they're written makes it hard to be able to track them. This happens to everybody. They may be goals you wrote and now we're looking at with a different lens, or it could be something you inherited from another team. But what we have is what we're going to use, whatever's written in the IEP at this point. And if you have a challenging goal, the SPED coaches are here to help you to figure out the best way to progress monitor. So let's start by looking at our baselines. So you want to look at your IEP. What is the current goal? You're going to work with what you have. So even though you might be missing information, or it's not very clear, or it's just not a goal you really like, we're not going to go through and rewrite all of these goals. We're going to work with what we have, progress monitor where they're at now. So the baseline we're not talking about where you start at the beginning of this goal. Baseline in this example is talking about the present level, where the student is now, where they're coming in from the summer. That could be very different for kids. You may see students who have growth. You may see students who have regression, but you're going to want that information to be able to compare back to what they were doing in the spring. So progress monitor what is currently in the IEP. If you need help, there is a job aid at the bottom of this slide that kind of walks you through what it looks like in Enrich. It'll help you navigate the components of the IEP. So what is a probe? Probe is just referring to the tool used to gather your data points. It's an informal process at this point. You're not doing formal testing. You're just using the tools that you have to be able to gather that information to find out where the student is. So if you're using percentage when you track the goal, or the way the goal is written, your data is going to want to be taken in percentage. And then when you report on that goal and your goal reporting, it's going to want to be done in percentage. If you use ratio, the same thing. So whatever is written in the goal in terms of measurement should be the way that it's reflected in your data. Some goals may be missing some information, or they just aren't very measurable. Don't worry about this right now. There will be more to come on this topic. We are progress monitoring because it is essential for planning student needs. But students have also been out for a while. We have to remember they've been out probably for 6 months, many of them, out of the physical classroom. We need to know where they are now. And we want to be able to see how quickly they're going to be able to gain those skills. If they've lost skills, comparing it back to the data from the last semester. So it's really essential that we're progress monitoring, which I know everybody knows. It's just the nuances of trying to get it done. So let's take a look at sample goal number 1. The goals we use in this presentation are a random sample. I just want to reiterate, these are not exemplars that we picked. So you're going to work with the goal that you have. I know I've said that a few times, but I just don't want people to go in there and think, oh, wow, I don't know how I'm supposed to measure this. I need to rewrite the whole goal. We don't want that. You'll write better goals, or goals that make more sense as you go throughout the year. Let's work with a goal that's currently written in the IEP. So here we have a reading goal. It does have an objective. When you have a goal with an objective, you must be taking collecting data for both the objective and the goal. It says the student will identify the main idea from text at her instructional level 3 out of 5 trials. And then the objective, student will use visuals to help with main idea from a story read at her instructional level. The unit of measurement is listed as main idea rubric. With the information provided within a rubric, with the information provided within this goal, and it says progress monitoring, I have a better idea of how when I want to progress monitor. So we'll achieve main idea rubric 3 out of 5 or more, baseline 0, measure progress every 6 weeks. This helps me understand how often I need to do it. It does not mean I have one writing sample for 6 weeks. It means I'm reporting on it based on gathered information over the 6-week period. I should have multiple samples. How many samples really depends on what you're looking at, how often you think you need to gather it in order to get a clear representation of where the student is. So just to be clear, you're going to want to get many samples to be able to progress monitor over that 6-week period. So in this goal, we have a rubric. Rubrics are great. We love them because you have a continuum that provides information for the student. It also gives that student feedback, which is incredibly beneficial. With rubrics, you can dig deeper. It's also nice because other people can now take that rubric and use it to be able to gather the information that you might need. So it's not just you collecting that data. You can use other data tools like a built-in progress monitoring for interventions, running records, tools you created. You probably already have tools that you're using that do exactly what you need it to do. You can find tools on Google. You can download and edit them, and you might find a rubric you really like, but you'll change it up for different students depending on what they're working on. And based on the goal, I know that I need to report every 6 weeks. And so think about, again, how much do you need to gather in that 6-week period to be able to represent a clear picture of what the student is able to do. If you get 1 or 2 samples, you may have a good day, a bad day, and it's not a really clear picture. You want to have enough to know where the student is. And when in doubt, you must match what is written in the IEP. So here, it's very clear that we're going to have report on that you're going to have it listed in there every 6 weeks, your samples, and you're going to be putting that in there to track it. But if it didn't list it, you kind of have to come up with something. And we're going to look at that in the next goal. It might be listed in the IEP, it may not be. So with goal 2, it's a writing goal. Student will correctly punctuate his or her writing and correctly edit, proofread his or her writing to have 80% correct punctuation and grammar. Notice there is no objective for this one. And it's not that you need to have an objective or not. Just know that if you do have an objective, you need to be measuring that. So you'll notice that this goal is missing information in the progress monitoring section at the very bottom of the slide. It's just blank. So this is the area which would detail the frequency. When it's explicitly stated, it makes it much easier. Clearly from the last goal, we know I need to be putting it in there. I need to have that information for a 6-week period. Here, I don't know what I need. So I may need to look back into my present levels section. I may need to look at other goals that were written to see if there's, or even just see if it's listed anywhere in the IEP that gives me an idea of how frequently it needs to be tracked and reported on. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take a look at this goal and decide what makes sense, what's going to give me the best picture of where the student is, and how to be able to make decisions on where to go next. In this same goal, we're going to be using a rubric as well. Again, we talked about how beneficial rubrics are. This one we're doing for writing. This rubric was found on Google, and it was created to fit what we needed to measure for the student. You want to remove any ambiguous language to make it clear for teachers. Explain explicitly how you will logistically collect this data with other teachers. Maybe there's a time that they do a specific writing section or a journal entry or something that just makes a lot of sense that would make it easy just to collect the sample. That might be a great time. You don't always have to just pull a child aside and then have them do a writing sample. You might be able to plan with a teacher to find a time that's naturally already embedded in the classroom. Rubric templates. So if we move to the next slide, once you have a rubric that is editable, you can change it for your individual student needs. Those rubrics can be used for multiple students and just target what it is they're working on. So these are some samples. You can edit them and use them how you need to use them. And you may already have tools that you're using that work fine, and that we're not asking you to change how you're doing it. So what's next? There's more information to come. Again, this is the first part of just the introduction to a series. We can talk about it within our professional learning. Possible topics would include SMART goals, additional progress monitoring resources, and the option to have open labs so that you can actually have some support around those goals and how to monitor them. So remember that you need to take the data to understand where the student is and to know where the student needs to be. You're going to be actively involved in learning groups within the Schoology. And so this information is really good to take along as you're developing those lesson plans and unit plans, and you start to work with your gen ed teachers as well. So I hope you found this helpful. In the last slide, you'll see that coaches are available to support you. Again, I'm Becky Branch. We also have Beth Tudor, Brandy Flannery, Lisa Odoricio, Missy Butler, and Robin Walth. We can help you with figuring out the best tool to use to track a goal, or even what you're measuring in a goal, if you're confused on that. Again, you can also go to our Schoology group. This is the code. Currently, this is the code. If it changes, we'll post it somewhere else. But this is the code to get into the Schoology group. It's not a class. It's a group where you can come to find resources, ask questions, and just connect with other providers. Okay, thank you for joining this session. We will see you at the next one.